coming. Just to repeat myself, thank you for coming to the cabinet meeting of the 12th of July. Just to go through the business tonight, we have apologies from item 1. This is apologies from councillors Byers and Lanning, and we wish them well. In the room tonight, there's 4 of us, and the remainder are joining on Zoom, and all officers are also joining on Zoom as well. Thank you to everybody for coming. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I can't see any on our screens, so that's no. Item 3. Minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of June 2021. Can we agree that they are a true record? Agreed. That's fantastic. That's agreed. So items 4 and 5 refer to the Merton Schools PFI contract. I'm suggesting that we don't worry about item 4, which would exclude the public, because there are some matters on here that are confidential, but I've been assured that those speaking will not refer to confidential matters, so we will be able to talk about this item in public, which is fantastic. So over to you to present this to the cabinet member responsible, Councillor Eleanor Stringer.
Thank you very much, Chair. And yes, I will talk about the purpose of this paper without going into detail, given the commercial sensitivity of the contents, but I thought it was still important that we raise this at the public meeting. So firstly, I'd like to thank Tom Proctor, who's been leading on ensuring that the concerns raised by schools about how the current private finance initiative contract wasn't meeting their needs. He's been working on how this could be addressed in the future. So as background, the council has a private finance initiative contract for 4 secondary schools in Merton. This commenced back in 2022 and finishes in 2029, so we're entering the kind of final 8 years. This paper concerns a settlement which we're proposing, which would address a number of issues and changes to the contract. This proposed changes would include a change to the day-to-day facilities management services that would give schools more control in the future, which is what they've been asking for. So changing a contract of this size and length is complex, and lengthy commercial discussions with the PFI contractor have not been fully completed. So it's a fully green confidential paper. So unless we go into private session, I cannot go into much further detail, but I'd like to request your support on the recommendations that the cabinet members will have read and seen, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. The lead officer for this item is Jane McSherry, our recently appointed Director of Children's Schools and Families. Jane, is there anything that you would like to say in addition?
Nothing further to add, Chair. Fantastic.
Well, I've had no indications from any cabinet members that they want to ask any further questions. So if it's okay with everyone in the room, we'll move to a vote on the recommendations, which are A to C. Are those agreed? They're agreed. Thank you very much. And thank you to Jane and your officers for your hard work on this. Very, very much appreciated. The work that you're doing to provide our schools efficiently and effectively and with good value for money. Thank you very much. So item 6 then, moving on, is a reference from the Sustainable Communities Scrutiny Panel on Clarions repairs and maintenance. To speak on this first, we're going to ask the chair of the Sustainable Communities panel, Councillor Aidan Mundy, to just introduce that. And if you can speak to within, is it three minutes, would be much appreciated. Thank you, Councillor Mundy.
Thank you, Leader. And if you hear kids screaming in the background, I promise they're just getting ready for bed. Thank you again. So the residents of the Eastfield Estate have asked for our help to ensure the homes they rent from Clarion Housing Association are free of damp, vermin and are safe for habitation. As chair of the Sustainable Communities panel, I called on Clarion to attend our meeting on the 24th of June, and they did. Council has put many of the issues raised by residents and more to them, and I would like to note particularly good contributions from Councillor Ben Butler and Geraldine Stanford. We wanted to know why this happened and of course what Clarion is doing to prevent this happening again. And in summary, we found the service failure in housing repairs was a result of poor processes prior to COVID and exacerbated by the pandemic, a breakdown of communications and trust between organisation and residents, and low levels of transparency with partners. The day after the panel meeting, Clarion knocked on doors of 452 properties on Eastfields Estate, and they spoke with around 300 residents, half of whom raised an issue, and over 250 new repairs were identified from that engagement. And what these stats show is that some properties have multiple issues, and there were over 140 properties whom Clarion were unable to access in that specific engagement. This means the true number of repairs required on the estate is much higher, and means this won't be cracked with a simple meeting of the panel. We need to continue this forward. So at every meeting of the panel between now and February 2022, I and the panel will continue to hold those responsible to account. And in order to do so and support our new resident champion, Councillor Nick Draper, we need the information, regular flow of information to identify the progress and areas of concern. And that is why I'm asking Cabinet tonight to support both our recommendations, which are specific, measured and achievable. Thanks very much, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mundy. That's very helpful. Thank you to your panel for looking into this important matter. From the Cabinet, the Cabinet member responsible who's going to respond is Councillor Martin Whelton. Over to you, Martin.
Can I thank the Councillor Mundy for the work that the Sustainable Communities panel undertook at its scrutiny panel weeks ago. As I've said publicly on the record, I view at the utmost seriousness what has actually happened in terms of the Eastfields estate. Clarion have let down many people living there, and it's important that action is actually taken. I myself, as Cabinet member, have had regular meetings with them, including one today. I welcome that they've knocked on every door on the estate. I understand it's 452 residents, but this should have happened before the issues come to light. It's a great shame that it took for these issues to be publicised before Clarion took the necessary action. As Cabinet member, I will continue to be closely monitoring their performance, including weekly meetings, but also as well in terms of liaison and dialogue I have with them, as it mentioned in the scrutiny report as well. In terms of the requests for scrutiny, we're quite happy to accept the recommendations which have been made by the panel. I think it is important that there is that level of transparency, but as well, people are signposted to the correct information and know where they can make the necessary complaints if Clarion fail to achieve resolution to their repairs issues. I think as a council, we're quite conscious that this estate does need to be regenerated and rebuilt, and there will be a further paper coming before both the Sustainable Communities panel in early September, Cabinet, followed by full council in mid-September. This does need to happen, but before any kind of regeneration, Clarion do need to make these houses livable where there are continuing issues, because it is unacceptable that many of these problems have arisen. And I myself, as Cabinet member, will be continuing to have regular dialogue, not just with Clarion, but also as well in terms of residents of that estate going forward, and on other Clarion estates. I've asked for performance information to be provided from all their estates across the borough. That has been provided. I will also as well be going shortly on a visit with Claire Miller, the Chief Executive, and the Merton Chief Executive, Hannah Doody, as well. I look forward to obviously working with the scrutiny panel going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Whelton. The lead officer on this item has been Hannah Doody, who's now the Chief Executive. Hannah, is there anything that you wanted to add, or is it, do you want another officer to answer to add anything?
No, nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Fantastic. The only question I'd had indicated by a cabinet member was from Councillor Owen Pritchard.
Chair. Just for Councillor Whelton, what are the financial implications of the suggestions here?
I think in terms of the financial implications, they can be met from internal resourcing as well, in terms of signposting people information. There is information already on our website, but it's actually providing that additional information so people can get. I think we obviously have to be very careful, obviously, in terms of resources of the council going forward, but also as well reassuring people that they can get this information and the people to contact.
Okay, so no additional. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. It is reassuring that it says in the report that there are no financial implications arising from the recommendation. So maybe we should include that in addition to what we've got on our report, so that we note and approve the panel's report subject to no further resources being required. Does that make sense?
I'm happy for that. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy for that to be accepted. Yeah.
Okay, since we're happy with that in the room, thank you very much to everybody who's been involved in the report. It's a very important issue, and one that matters a great deal to all of us in the room. So thank you for helping us with this one. So that's noted and approved, subject to no further resources being required. We agree recommendation 1 as amended. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 7. Which is parking infrastructure and modernisation, and to the lead member is Councillor Lanning, or one of them is Councillor Lanning, who's not here. So I'm going to ask the other lead member, Councillor Martin Whelton, to speak on this.
Thank you, Chair. I formally move the report and recommendations. This report asks for approval to modernise our parking infrastructure, including the installation of 78 new payment terminals to replace the most frequently used pay and display borough with the U machines installed in the locations they are most used in the borough. Of the U machines, 33 on-street payment terminals will have chip and PIN and contactless payment facilities, as they are only considered medium usage machines. And 14 of the council's car park will have at least one machine that continues to accept coins, contactless and card payment facilities. These terminals will have bigger screens and allow for contactless payments. In order to modernise our service, we will remove around 350 underused pay and display parking machines. In total, 268 machines across the borough take less than £2,000 in cash a year, and 171 take less than 1,000. This equates to less than £5 per day. Indeed, the cost of collection is near enough more than those machines actually take in. We're proposing that these changes are implemented from October 2021. Already, 76% of parking payments in Merton allows them to complete their transaction by phone, text, or through an app. This is up from 43% in 2018-19. Anyone who is unable to make a payment via Ringo will still be able to make cash payments at any local retail outlets that offer the PayPoint service. Many council services are moving towards more digital payment solutions, and this scheme offers Merton an opportunity to review the parking payment options and infrastructure available. Like many other boroughs, we are moving into a more digital age in parking by switching to a mostly cashless payment system. but unlike some other London boroughs, we will be retaining some machines in the borough. We also expect the 76% figure of online payments to actually increase further. This also builds upon previous changes where we have introduced virtual residential business and other permits, including the e-visitor permit, which is quickly replacing scratch cards as the most popular form of visitor parking sessions. In April 2021, 63% of all visitor parking permit was through the e-visitor option. This was 0 in January 2020. We have also seen 97% of residents registering for online accounts where they can now manage and make a range of online changes, including the facility to register a different vehicle for a temporary period. COVID has accelerated these changes, and this is part of the infrastructure changes which will see us digitally transforming this service further, but also as well modernising parking. However, accessibility is absolutely key to everything we do. So we've been sure to work out alternatives for those who may not be able to use Ringo and advance the release of the Cabinet report as part of the equalities assessment. A list of organisations listed in page 30 and page 31 of this report were emailed and called to a series of webinar during various points of the day on the 17th of June. Officers presented the principle of the removal of machine and asked for comment on how their members may be affected if a machine was removed and the members had to use Ringo or a PayPoint location with retailers. As a council, we will continue to engage with these organisations, but I believe that this report is the right way forward, and I ask that Cabinet approves these recommendations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That's fantastic. The lead officer for this item is Chris Lee, the Director of Environment and Regeneration. Chris, is there anything that you'd like to add to Martin's comments?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Very good. I've had one Cabinet member ask me to just highlight one of the points that was made. Councillor Agatha Akigina, do you want to make your point?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I just wanted to ask Councillor Martin Whelton about the cash facilities, because some people may not have phones. So we make sure that they're able to actually access cash facilities for their parking. So if you can reassure us that, you know, this will happen, we won't leave people behind. I'd be grateful to know that.
Thank you. I can reassure that the facilities will still be available. The list of retailers where parking payments can be made in cash is listed in Appendix 1C of the report. I think it is important that these mechanisms are available. We know that 93–94% have mobile phones. Similarly, 95% have contactless cards. But nevertheless, I think it is important for people who don't have these facilities to still be able to make cash payments if they so wish. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Akigina, for raising the point, and Councillor Whelton for highlighting the work that we do to ensure that everybody is able to pay in the way that's appropriate for them. I don't think there were any further comments or questions. So are we happy to agree recommendation 1 on this? Thank you very much. That's been approved. Sorry, whilst I'm here, I should have said at the outset that we're also in attendance this evening is Councillor Daniel Holden from the opposition party, and we'd like to welcome him here. I'd like to particularly welcome him here because I understand that he's had his second dose of the vaccine downstairs in the Civic Centre for the last few Fridays. Very delighted to say that we've made the Civic Centre available for the NHS so that they can provide vaccinations to residents on the way home from work, probably in most cases. It's a great service. Did it work well? Very good service, Councillor Holden says. Thank you ever so much to everybody involved. I'm sorry, I'm digressing during the middle of the meeting, but I hope that it can be passed on through whoever is here to the NHS and our staff downstairs. What a brilliant service they provide. Thank you, and thank you for Councillor Holden for using it. Anyway, sorry, that was a distraction. On to item 8. which is the Additional Restrictions Grant Scheme. And the lead member on this is Councillor Owen Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. First off, I'd like to thank Councillor Byers and Karen Holland and David Kepler for their work on this and the clarity of the paper. Councillor Byers obviously away this evening. I'm not going to recap the provenance of the ARG scheme. That's done on pages 67 and 68. I'm just going to touch on ARG 2 and 3. ARG 2 was spent, we put £50,000 towards the building of 10 parklets, and we managed to fund 138 of 275 applicants using the bespoke points scheme. That resulted in about just over £3,000 per point, and us awarding £4.8 million worth of grants. It's worth highlighting, however, that the total loss of income that had to be covered by that £4.8 million of grants was 72.6 million. Therefore, the level of grants paid equated to only 6.6% of the reduction of income for the qualifying businesses, and obviously no reduction in the loss of income for non-qualifying businesses. The good news, however, was that by using the point system, the scheme was administered successfully and hit the deadline. So we managed to spend the full £5.965 million by the deadline, and that entitles us to phase 3. The phase 3 funding, therefore, is going to be split into 3 streams. The first is going to be about 600k to Future Merton to continue the implementation of wider support packages, and they've got a number of them set up ready to go. Stream 2 is going to be a reopening of what we saw in ARG 2. And the reason we want to do that is because the window is quite small and forced because of the timelines the federal government gave us. So and because it was at the same time as the high streets were reopening, we just want to give people another chance to apply. However, linked to that, we're going to make the pounds per point exactly the same. So there's no benefit from having missed it the first time, and there's no loss from having missed it the third time. It's this third stream that we're asking for your agreement to delegate the future spending of the third stream to Tobin and I, so we don't have to bring it back to Cabinet, and we'll make a decision on the mechanism for the third stream pending the full understanding of what the first and second stream looks like. So that's really what we're asking people this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent, thank you, Councillor Pritchard. The lead officer on this item is David Kepler. I know his brilliant team have worked very hard on this, and I'd like to thank them. But David, did you have anything that you would like to add to Councillor Pritchard's introduction? That I'll take as a no. Another cabinet member has asked to ask something on this. Councillor Natasha Irons.
Hello, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Owen, for detailing the way that the council's worked so hard to get this money out to the community. My question really was just like, how well received has it been up to this point, and have we had any feedback?
Yeah, we have. So I'm mindful of two sides of the stories, because we haven't had enough money to cover the losses experienced by business in Merton, and that's an absolute. We just haven't had the money from central government to do that. Therefore, the scheme has been very targeted in where it could best achieve effect. So smalls and micros, and also those who've achieved 40%. Therefore, if you speak to firms who've had 40% losses, if you speak to firms who've only had 39% losses, or you speak to firms that are bigger than the smalls, they will obviously be outside the scope of this scheme, and therefore they're not going to be happy with it. And to them, I say, I'm sorry, I really do understand the pain that you've suffered over the last sort of 18 months. But at the same time, the issue is with the amount of funding that we have from central government. I just repeat that we've only touched on the 6.6% of the losses incurred by those covered. For those covered, there's a couple of what I think are excellent quotes on page 69. The first I'll quote by Abul Muazzam from Crystal Everest Linen. He said, let me take the opportunity to wholeheartedly thank you and your panel for considering our application. By awarding this grant, you have not only saved this business, but also saved the livelihood of the current employees. Also, this grant would help us create at least another 20 to 30 new jobs in the local area. We are a labour-intensive business and our objective to employ people from the local area. Is there any scheme or grants available in the future? Please keep us informed. And I think that really hits on why we did this, is that we wanted very much to focus on keeping local people in jobs, keeping people in employment, mindful that this is an economic crisis that possibly one of the worst we've seen in 300 years, and mindful of my experience growing up in sort of South Wales valleys in the 80s, where I saw the long-term impacts of long-term unemployment, that very much the purpose of this scheme was to keep people in work. And I think we've done that, and I think businesses, those who benefited, do appreciate that. So thank you for the question, Natasha.
No, that's excellent. Thank you, Councillor Irons, and thank you, Councillor Pritchard, for a very comprehensive reply and for leading on this report tonight. Really appreciate it. There's no other comments in the room or online, so we'll move to the recommendations. Recommendations 1 and 2, can they be agreed? They're agreed. Thank you very much. So now the next item is item 9, the draft housing strategy, the draft housing delivery strategy, and that's over to Councillor Whelton again.
Thank you, Chair. This asks for Cabinet to formally approve 6 weeks of public consultation on Merton's draft housing delivery strategy. Building more homes is one of the ways government, the Mayor of London and Council use to help meet housing needs for Merton residents, given we have been set delivery targets of 900 homes a year. The strategy itself considers the need for additional homes in Merton and sets out mechanisms for potential delivery options, presenting the best options for success. The focus of the strategy was achieving housing growth and contributing to a wider group of policies and strategy areas, in particular, the local plan and homelessness and rough sleeping. We know as a council that we have growing demands for more homes to be built, but we also need more social rented homes, given we have 9,000 people on the housing waiting list, which also includes many people living in overcrowded accommodation. Last year, we only saw 191 nominations across all bedroom categories available to rehouse people. And to put this in stark contrast, there was only 80 homes with 2 or more bedrooms which became available. Only 18 of those were 3 and 1 was a 4-bedroomed. So that shows within that 80, which shows the huge challenge we are under. Within the strategy, it also considered the need for new homes in Merton that needs to be built. Drawing on views expressed in workshops and conversations with groups and individuals across the council and externally on a range of evidence in relation to housing supply and demand, it identifies those options for further action. The work also includes research on Merton's housing supply and interviews with registered housing providers. Within the strategy, we also look at the type of housing Merton needs. I would like to take this opportunity of thanking Campbell to Kell, who undertook work for Merton Council to develop this draft housing strategy. It is one of a range of actions Merton is undertaking to increase the supply and quality of new homes. This is a 6-week borough-wide public consultation on the draft strategy, and the feedback will be used to inform the final housing delivery strategy. I urge many people to respond to this consultation. Housing is one of the biggest issues we face here in Merton. It's clear that more needs to be done, but we also need as well to increase the number of homes built here in the borough. And as I said earlier, especially in terms of the socially rented homes. I formally move the report, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Whelton, and I think the last year has really highlighted the importance of good housing. What people have been through during the lockdown, we need to do what we can to help as many people as we can. The lead officer on this item is Chris Lee, the Director of Environment and Regeneration. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add to Councillor Whelton's introduction?
Nothing to add, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Fantastic. I had a request to make a comment or ask a question from Councillor Caroline Cooper-Marbia.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Martin, for the report. I just wanted to ask how much is the reduction in government support for housing actually affecting our ability to meet the housing needs of our residents?
I'd like to thank Councillor Cooper-Marbia for that question. I think it has had a considerable effect over the last decade, especially in terms of social grant, which was slashed in half in 2010, because there is a desperate need to provide more social homes for rent. And I think the figures we see here are especially stark, but also as well the number of overcrowded people living in accommodation. I think housing is one of the biggest challenges we face here in Merton, and I think it's something that does need to be resourced better. The more money we receive, the more homes we are able to build, and the more we can deliver at social rent, which is one of the most important things facing us, especially given the number of people living in overcrowded accommodation across Merton. There's many people living, 3 kids living in 1-bedroomed accommodation, not just here in Merton, but across London, and that is unacceptable, and it's something that does need to be addressed, but it does need government resources to put this at the top of in terms of political priorities.
No, that's a very powerful point. And if I can, as there are no further speakers, I just wanted to pay great tribute to Councillor Whelton and officers who've been working with him, Chris Lee, Steve Langley, and many others who for many years have worked so hard to achieve what we have done. In spite of those challenges, we have the lowest number of people in temporary accommodation in London here in Merton, and that's a fantastic achievement. During the lockdown, we were able to make sure that everybody the everyone in target was met for the street homeless in the borough. That again is a fantastic achievement. So well done to all of you, and we're very grateful for the work that you do on housing, given the challenges that we face from government funding. So do appreciate that very much. I don't see any other speakers, so can we move to the recommendation? Recommendation A. That's agreed. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item. Strategic Partner Programme, Future Approach. And the lead cabinet members there are Councillor Rebecca Lanning, who's not here, and Councillor Marcy Skeet. So Marcy, do you want to introduce?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. This is the 3rd consecutive year that the level of funding to the voluntary sector has been increasing, with a large increase in 2021 and 2020 and 2021 compared to previous years, largely due to the pandemic. So I think the local charities are delighted. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you, Marcy. And the lead officer is John Dimmer. John, are you online? Is there anything you'd like to add to Councillor Skeet's introduction?
Chair, John is not online, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Hannah.
No, that's okay, Chair. Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Very good, and a great achievement to be able to continue to increase the amount of support to our voluntary sector in this area. But really great work. Marcy, if you can pass on our gratitude to officers who make that happen and achieve our priorities.
I will do. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so if we can agree to the recommendations, which are 1 to 3 on this occasion, not letters, numbers, 1 to 3, are they agreed? Brilliant, that's agreed. So move on to item 11, which is the Treasury Management Strategy Annual Review. The lead cabinet member for that is Councillor Tobin Byers, who isn't here. But it's a fairly straightforward report about how we manage the treasury funds that the council keeps. it's reassuring to see that by using our resources in such a business-like way, we're able to continue to make savings that help us to avoid service cuts in future. So I will pass over to Hannah, Hannah Doody, the Chief Executive. Is there anything further you'd like to add to draw our attention to, Hannah?
Myself. Thank you, Chair. The report before you, just really wanted to bring to Cabinet's attention 2.5.3 and the work that financial services have done during the COVID to make sure our income generated from treasury investments continues to be safe, just to highlight that mainly, and also the addition to MMFs in November 2020, which again gave us the opportunity during the pandemic to spread our cash balance and maintain liquidity. Thank you, Chair. Nothing further to add. Happy to take any questions.
That's very good. Thank you, Hannah. I don't see any questions. So shall we move straight to recommendation A? Can that be agreed? Agreed. That's brilliant. Then we move on to item 12, which is the financial monitoring report for period 2, which I think is the first one that we present to Cabinet. Cabinet member responsible is Councillor Byers again, but obviously he's not here. But I would just like to thank all of our staff across the council who are involved in this. It's a very important part of the discipline of this council that we look every month into the spending projections in each department very thoroughly. It enables us to get an idea as to whether there might be potential variances either over or under in terms of how much resources there'll be available at the end of the year. And if there's positive variances, then it gives us an opportunity to look at services where savings may be made at the end of the year without making service cuts necessary instead. Obviously, there's a big gap in our budget projected for future years. So if we can find savings through that way, then it's a very efficient way of doing so. So thank you to everybody involved for putting together these reports and for the hard work that goes into them. There's a modest variance in our favour at the moment, and obviously that may help in future to provide additional resilience for council services. That's a brief introduction, but Hannah, was there anything further that you'd like to draw to members' attention before we pass the motion?
Thank you, Chair. This is month 2, and just to remind Cabinet, we need to proceed with caution. We continue to respond to COVID, and you'll know as we move towards the easing of restrictions after the 19th of July and continuing into August, our responsibilities and duties around local outbreak management plans and contain will continue. So those pressures will continue. We are seeing a significant increase in admissions to hospital that will have a direct impact on discharges, which will have a direct impact on adult social care. And it just to highlight in relation to children's schools and families, you will see that they are forecasting at month 2 and an underspend. Again, I would treat with caution as we start to move towards recovery. We're still not seeing the full impact on our children and on our families. We are starting to see an increase in referrals, and that trend will probably continue right into the autumn. Just to highlight those areas. Thank you, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Those are really, really good points. If we reflect back on where we were this time last year and the uncertainty around what might happen through COVID, we may not be in quite such a perilous position as we were 12 months ago. But there is still a lot to be cautious about, given the circumstances that the country's in at present. But those things noted, the discipline of doing the report is extremely important to me. So thank you to everybody involved. Can we agree the recommendations A and B? They are agreed. Thank you very much. So that moves us on to item 13, which is the financial review outturn. And as Hannah alluded to just now, 2020 to 21 was a very hard year with very fluctuating fortunes throughout it. We had been expecting at one point a really catastrophic shortfall in our budget, a really huge deficit that would have had big implications for council services. But I'm pleased to say that due to good management of our staff here and due to effective lobbying by our representatives to make sure that the government did provide what was necessary, we have concluded this year with a very modest positive variance, and that is helpful. Some years there's a positive variance and some years there's a negative variance, and often they equalise, but on the occasions where there's a positive variance, it enables us to build a little bit more resilience into the financial projections for the future. And it will, on this occasion, hopefully give us a chance to grow back strongly as a community from a slightly more resilient position than we'd been anticipating we would be in even just a few months ago. So thank you to everybody who's been so effective with the management of our finances over the past year so that we can get to this relatively positive position. I've mentioned it a few times over the last few years, but we're a business-like council, and the way that our staff behave in such a fashion really helps us, and we do appreciate it. But as Hannah mentioned just now, there are really major challenges arising from COVID that put the future into a great deal of doubt. So there's a lot here to consider, but we are very, very grateful for everybody's help in getting us to where we are now with the financial outturn. That's my introduction. Hannah, was there anything that you would like to draw our attention to as well?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. With a favourable position, it's worth noting the detail behind that position. I think you will see the stark effects on two departments in particular, our Environment and Regen Department and our Corporate Services, in terms of loss of income and the impact of administering and dealing with the business side of responding to COVID. I think for both the Children's Social Care Department and Adult Social Care and Housing in particular, forecasting in the last year, Chair, has been incredibly difficult. That is because we weren't always guaranteed of the grant funding. If I give you an example, in social care and in housing, the grants at times were only given for 3 months, where the NHS picked up the cost of discharges. That was then extended. That didn't help our forecast, of course, because we needed to forecast for the care of those vulnerable people, and that we have a duty to care under social care. So I think for departments, that forecasting in particular areas were particularly different, and I'm pleased to see that the outturn is a favourable one. Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it there, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Those are really powerful points. I can't see any additional comments, though. Councillor Pritchard actually wants to make a point.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just really want to echo what the Chief Executive said there, and also when she spoke previously, is that we're not out of the response phase yet. And the last 18 months has been something none of us have ever seen, and the implications of it in terms of our spending patterns and our demand patterns over the last 18 months are unique. But we also don't know what the surge in demand for our services and therefore our resources is going to be over the next 1, 2, and 3 years as a direct consequence of this public health crisis. We're still in the response phase. We're not even really entering the recovery phase. And as such, we're still in the foothills of the economic crisis. And I think that's really, really important to realize, is that we don't look upon this and think we're through it and we've managed to save £8 million. All we've actually done is quite probably delayed spend as we see an increased demand for critical services over the next 2 or 3 years. So everything that we do needs to be mindful of that. Thank you, Chair.
No, that's really helpful, and actually, it's really particularly helpful for someone from the valleys to talk to us about what it's like to be in the foothills. We're a long way from out of this and into the recovery phase, and really, really important for all of us to reflect on this. Some may help us a little bit, but it is a long way from security in the future. But anyway, are there any, if there's no further comments, can we agree recommendations A to C? That's agreed. Thank you very much. So we're on to item 14, which is Chas 2013 Limited. Now, what we're suggesting here is making a number of technical changes to the management and structure of Chas, which, for those who don't know, is a brilliant sort of spin-off company that has been part of the council, and by their amazing work, they've been able to generate dividends for the council, which has helped us to reduce the amounts of cuts that we would need to make to services. Once again, it's an example of a really great organisation that has provided some strength to the council. By being entrepreneurial means that we don't have to make cuts that affect our residents. But anyway, they're quite technical changes, and I think that the report speaks for itself. However, Louise Round I have is down as the lead officer on this occasion. If there's anything further, Louise, you want to draw our attention to?
No, hopefully the report is self-explanatory. Happy to answer any questions if it's not.
Thank you, Louise, and will you please pass on our gratitude to those who work at Chas and to your colleagues who oversee it and make sure that it runs smoothly and that its governance is as effective as it is currently. Can we agree recommendations A to E? They're agreed. Thank you very much. That's the last item for tonight. From the Civic Centre and the 6 of us here, keep abiding to the rule of 6, even at the end, hopefully, of the lockdown. Thank you all.